Okay. All right, so take out, or just look at the back of the lab here, okay? So let's talk about how to write a lab report. All right, so title. There could be a separate page if you like. You know, it looks nice just to have title. So what would the title of this lab be?
Where did it go?
Right, where did the what go?
Mass.
Where did the mass go, right? So I would center it, you know, whatever. Again, I love bad chemistry memes, so if you want to throw like a picture of chemistry cat or something stupid on the front like that, stupid funny, you know, I appreciate that. Starts me out on a good foot. Your name and your lab partner's name, okay? And then also, you know what, I forgot to write in there, put the date completed, right? So the date you actually did the lab. Now, have you guys ever heard of an abstract before? No, okay. The abstract, make a note here, this is going to be the last thing you write. So right over there, the last thing you write. It's sort of like when you're writing in creative writing class or something like that, like your first paragraph is like your last, you always write that, right? Isn't that something? Again, I'm out of my scope here, okay. But what an abstract is it's a short summary giving the most important information about your experiment. It should be brief, and it includes the things listed: objective, hypothesis, methods. Now, when I say methods, not a lab procedure, just quick, concise. What an abstract is used for in the scientific world is to search different experiments. So let's say, for example, you're in the lab and you want to find an experiment that turns clear water pink. And you know you've got pH, right? So you want to find the experiment that's going to match these, the stuff that you have. So you search the abstract. Rather than sit here and read the whole paper and find out, oh, they don't use pH, they use TH. I'm just making this up, right? You want to find the one that fits your needs. So the abstract is going to be that snapshot of what happened in the lab, so that if I read through this quickly, I can say yes or no if this is the paper for me, right? Because scientific papers can get very long, right? Everybody cool with that? So that's the abstract. So you're going to say the objective. So let's, sorry, let me look over here. Jared, what was the objective of this lab? Why'd you do it? Just to light candles?
No, to see what happens to the candle after it's lit, like how the mass change.
Right, exactly. So maybe your abstract would sound something like this. The purpose of this lab was to examine the loss of mass of a candle after letting it burn for 5 minutes. So maybe you just want to jot something like that down, right? That would be your objective. So that's 1 to 2 sentences. Your hypothesis at the beginning of the lab was what, Kate? What do you think was going to happen?
I thought that after the candle was lit for 5 minutes, then it would lose mass.
Right. So it is hypothesized, by the way, and you're not writing I or we, right? So it is hypothesized that the candle mass will decrease. Okay? So I have 2 sentences so far. See how brief this is? Abstract should not be this long, arduous thing. Okay? Methods. Right? For this lab, Hunter, what were your methods?
The methods.
Quick. Just real easy.
What, like what we did?
Yeah, exactly.
We lit the candle, and then, oh well, first we
Good.
what's it called?
Masked it.
Masked it.
Yep.
And then we lit it, and then waited till it for 5 minutes, then let it dry, then masked it again.
Right, perfect. So candle was masked and allowed to burn for 5 minutes and then remasked again. What is that, like 2-3 sentences I just said? Right? Perfect. Boom, boom, boom. Now, maybe you want to say that it was a tea light. That's a good thing to put in there, right? So maybe somebody that's burning a giant Yankee candle doesn't want your tea light experiment. So a tea light, that would be a key thing to put in there. Okay, and then results, right? So you would come in here and say, it was found that the candle lost however many milligrams, whatever it was, after 5 minutes of burning. The conclusion is the mass was lost to whatever. You guys are going to think about that. Where did the mass go, right? And that's your conclusion. So I probably said about maybe 10 sentences there, but does everybody get the idea? So if you were to pick up that paper, you could just scan those 10 sentences and be like, okay, I know that they lit a tea light after they masked it. They masked it again after it burned for 5 minutes. They thought that it was going to lose mass, and the conclusion was that it lost mass this way. Everybody clear on abstract? Okay. Introduction. Now, this is a hard lab to really do introduction on, okay? But if I were you, I would just Google search burning of candles, or like something about candles, maybe about how candles first came into use, right? What did they use, right? Or maybe that you talk about like that they used oil, or that it's made out of soy now, right? There's all these soy candles. So the introduction is just a little flowery background about candles and such, okay? The procedure. Now here you're going to actually list out the steps. A bulleted point step, you know, or numbered is really good here. So step 1, obtained a candle and a laboratory balance. Step 2, zeroed out the balance and masked the candle, recorded the data. Number 3, very like, you know, so that somebody, your procedure should be so clear that somebody could just pick up your lab and do the lab, no problems, no other help, okay? You're writing that in terms of somebody doing the lab. Yes? Yes, yes? Yes. All right, guys. Okay, data. Here's where you'd put a table. So I'd write down here, this is where you're going to insert a table. I don't care if it's Excel or Sheets, or you make a table in Docs or whatever like that. But for this particular lab, I would have very simply initial mass and final mass, right? And then difference in mass, or mass lost, right? So it would look like this, okay? Initial mass, final mass, and then subtracting these two would give you your mass lost. Now, how many decimal places are you going to have? Just as many as you feel like taking? Huh? Right, well, how many your balance? Did I already have out to 2 decimal places? I think those all. So let's say my initial mass, I don't think it was like 11.67. Is that an acceptable mass? No, why? Got to put grams, because it could have been milligrams, it could have been pounds. I don't know how big this candle is, right? So you have to have units. I'm stressing that now because going forward on my tests, usually questions that are multiple choice are worth 3 points. 1 for the correct answer, 1 for the correct number of sig figs, which we'll talk about, and 1 for unit. So think about it. If you understand sig figs and what unit you're supposed to be in, how many points out of 3 did you just get? 2. So you could get the answer completely wrong, and as long as you have units and the correct sig figs, you still get 2 out of 3 points. I think that's pretty fair, right? Oh, okay. Right, then X mass, grams, to subtract grams. So that's your data table. Now, if there's any questions in the lab with for this lab, you have analysis, evaluate. All of this in this lab, this analysis part can go into your conclusion. Observations of the candle as it was burning and after the flame was extinguished. Can an amount lost vary? Maybe put that inquiry question in the question section. Or number 2. How about we do that? Analysis number 2 and inquiry, just make yourself a note, put that in the question section and answer those 2 questions. Your summary of the observations can go into conclusions. So put number 1 of the analysis in your conclusions, and then 2 and the inquiry into your question section. All right, and then conclusion. You're going to state your hypothesis or hypotheses again and say if they were supported or rejected. Obviously, this was pretty easy. Now, let's say your hypothesis wasn't supported. Do you want to lie and say that it was and change your hypothesis? No. I'm not going to mark you wrong for that. I mark you off if you don't analyze why. So let's say, for example, you started out saying, the hypothesis is that the mass of the candle will not change. Okay. Down in your conclusion, the hypothesis was not supported due to the fact that mass was lost. And reflecting upon the data, this makes sense because of the fact that, you know, obviously, I'm going to let you answer that because I want you to think about where it went, okay? So, as long as you can support or explain your errors, I'm perfectly fine with that. Don't fib the data to do that. Also, you're going to talk about any error analysis that you had. Let's say when you were lighting the candle, a little piece of the head of the match fell in the candle. Yes, Nelly?
Where does the number 2 in the
Sorry, number 1, I would just, it says summarize your observations. I'd put that in conclusions.
What about number 2?
Number 2 and inquiry can go in the question section because those are questions. I apologize, I didn't really put these together to align them, but is everybody clear on that? Just put 1, just answer that in your conclusion, and 2 an inquiry answer in your questions. So back to conclusions. You want to do an error analysis here. Okay, so it says analysis of the data and discussion of any problems that arose and altered the results. So you light the match, you light the candle, and a little piece of that head of the match falls in the candle. Is that going to affect your results?
Yeah.
Yes, you just added mass to something. So when your data doesn't support your hypothesis, in that case, obviously, I'd probably do the experiment over again. But just to give you an example, maybe when you're moving the candle, just a little bit of wax fell out. Okay, that's going to affect your data, something like that. Okay? And then suggest how to remedy these problems. Don't move the candle until the wax is solidified. Use a lighter instead of a match, something like that. And that's it. So this is a really easy lab to get started on this. And this is due next Tuesday. Typed up and submitted through Google Classroom. I think I put a link up there. I put the lab report. I don't know if I'll put this up there as an assignment. And I'll stop doing that, Allison, so your mother doesn't yell at you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put it as announcements. Just be aware. Does everybody have announcements on their thing?